The betrayal began on an ordinary evening, the kind that never warns you before it changes everything. Adil stood alone in the narrow hallway of his apartment building, the light above him flickering softly as his phone vibrated in his hand. He had just finished a long day at work, one filled with quiet hope. That morning he had been sure this would be the week his life finally moved forward. 6 years of loyalty, late nights, and sacrificed weekends were about to be rewarded. At least, that was what he had been promised. The message on his screen was short, polite, and cold. It thanked him for his dedication and informed him that the promotion he had worked toward had been given to someone else. No explanation beyond vague corporate words. No apology. No recognition of the years he had poured into the company. Adil read it once, then again, his mind struggling to accept what his eyes were seeing. His heart sank slowly, not crashing, but sinking like something heavy dropped into deep water. He leaned against the wall, the hallway suddenly feeling smaller, tighter. The name of the person who had received the promotion stared back at him from the screen. Samir. Adil let out a quiet breath. Samir was not just a colleague. He was the person Adil trusted the most at work. They had joined the company around the same time. They had struggled together, complained together, and dreamed together. Samir had sat across from him during lunch breaks, listening as Adil spoke about his ideas, his plans, and his hopes for the future. There had never been competition between them, or so Adil had believed. As Adil unlocked his apartment door, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email notification. For a brief second, the subject line flashed on his screen before disappearing, an internal message not meant for him. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, but it stayed in his mind. Something about strategy, leadership, and vision. Phrases that sounded familiar. Too familiar. Adil dropped his bag on the floor and sat on the edge of his couch, his pulse pounding. His instincts told him something was wrong. He opened his laptop, hands moving almost on their own. Few clicks later, he found it. The recalled email, still cached, still visible. As he read, the room felt colder. The ideas in the email were his, not inspired by his work, not influenced by it. They were his exact thoughts, his strategies, his words slightly polished, slightly rearranged, but unmistakably his. And they were presented under Samir's name. Adil stared at the screen, unable to blink. His mind replayed memories he had never questioned before. The late-night conversations where Samir had asked for advice. The casual questions during coffee breaks. The praise Samir had received in meetings for insights Adil had shared privately. The truth settled slowly, like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. Samir had taken everything. Adil closed the laptop and stood up, pacing the room. His apartment felt unfamiliar now, as if the betrayal had followed him home. He pressed his hands against his face, trying to steady his breathing. This was not just about a promotion. It was about trust, about friendship, about years of believing he was safe with someone. Anger rose, sharp and sudden. It burned through the shock, through the sadness, replacing them with something focused and dangerous. Adil clenched his fists. He had played fair. He'd believed in honesty. And for that, he had been punished. Images flashed through his mind. Samir smiling in meetings. Samir accepting congratulations. Samir enjoying the success that belonged to someone else. Each image tightened the knot in Adil's chest. But beneath the anger was something else. Confusion. How could someone he trusted so completely justify this? Had Samir planned it from the beginning, or had opportunities slowly turned into temptation? Adil wanted answers, but more than that, he wanted balance restored. That night, sleep refused to come. Adil lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the city hummed outside his window. His thoughts raced, replaying every detail, every moment where he might have missed the signs. He felt foolish, exposed. Trust, once broken, has a way of making you question your own judgment. Morning arrived without rest. Adil got dressed and went to work as usual, his body moving on habit alone. The office looked the same, but it felt different. Every sound seemed louder. Every conversation felt distant. Then he saw Samir. Samir stood near the conference room, laughing with a group of managers. He looked confident, relaxed, almost relieved. When his eyes met Adil's, there was a brief pause. Just a fraction of a second where something flickered across Samir's face. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. Then the smile returned, practiced and smooth. "Adil," Samir said warmly, walking over. "Did you see the announcement?" Adil nodded. Slowly, his voice felt far away when he spoke. "I did." Samir hesitated just for a moment. "I hope you know, this wasn't easy." The words felt empty. Adil studied Samir's face, searching for sincerity. He saw tension behind the confidence, a tightness around the eyes. But it did not soften the blow. "Congratulations," Adil said, his tone calm, controlled. Samir thanked him and walked away, leaving behind silence heavier than any argument. As Adil returned to his desk, something inside him hardened. The betrayal was no longer a question. It was a fact. And facts demanded action. Throughout the day, Adil worked mechanically, answering emails and attending meetings, all while his mind worked on something else. He began to understand how deeply this had affected him. It wasn't just professional harm, it was personal. Samir had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Yet even as thoughts of revenge formed, another voice spoke quietly within him, a voice that asked what this would turn him into. Adil had always believed in dignity, in rising above conflict. But dignity felt fragile now, easily crushed under the weight of injustice. By evening, Adil remained alone at his desk, the office nearly empty. The city lights outside the window flickered on one by one. He opened a new document on his computer. Not for work, but for himself. He began listing facts, dates, conversations, files, evidence, every detail he could remember. With each word he typed, the desire for payback grew clearer. This was not about anger anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been taken, about making sure the truth mattered. Still, somewhere deep inside, Adil felt the first hint of fear. Revenge promised satisfaction, but it also promised consequences. Once he stepped onto that path, there would be no turning back. As he shut down his computer and prepared to leave, Adil knew one thing with certainty. His life had split into two parts, before the betrayal and after it. And whatever came next would be shaped by the choice he had yet to make. The wrong had been done. The wound was real. And the quiet question followed him into the night, heavy and unresolved. How far was he willing to go to set things right? The days after the betrayal moved fast on the outside and painfully slow inside Adil's mind. Every morning he woke before his alarm, his thoughts already racing. The anger no longer shocked him. It had settled into something steady, something sharp. He went to work, answered emails, spoke in meetings, and smiled when required, but none of it reached his heart. His focus stayed locked on one thing, Samir. From a distance, Adil began to watch him closely. Samir carried his new role, like armor. He spoke with confidence, made bold decisions, and accepted praise without hesitation. Yet Adil noticed the small cracks others missed. Samir avoided long eye contact. He laughed too quickly. Shoulders stiffened whenever Adil entered the room. These details fed Adil's thoughts. Guilt lived there. Fear lived there too. At night, Adil sat alone in his apartment, the lights dim, the city quiet outside. He reviewed files, emails, old drafts. Each piece of evidence felt like a brick he could use to build his revenge. He imagined exposing Samir in front of everyone. He imagined the silence, the shock, the truth landing like a heavy blow. Those thoughts gave him a strange sense of control, even comfort. But control came with a cost. As his plan grew clearer, so did the weight in his chest. He had never been this person before. He had always believed that hard work spoke for itself. Now he found himself rehearsing conversations, predicting reactions, calculating outcomes. Revenge demanded attention, and it took more from him each day. At work, Samir tried to act normal. He invited Adil for coffee once, speaking carefully, choosing his words like stepping over glass. Adil declined politely. He could feel the tension, stretching between them, unspoken and heavy. Samir wanted forgiveness without confession. Adil saw that clearly. Inside Samir's mind, the story looked different. He told himself he had done what was necessary. He believed Adil would never push hard enough, never fight for his ideas. Samir convinced himself that leadership required boldness, not patience. Yet when he lay awake at night, his thoughts betrayed him. He feared exposure. He feared becoming exactly what he had once criticized. Adil felt those fears without hearing them spoken. They lived in Samir's posture, in his forced calm. That knowledge made Adil feel powerful, but also uneasy. Power, he realized, could change a person quietly. Weeks passed, the company moved forward, new projects began. Samir stood at the center of them, while Adil worked from the edges. On paper, everything looked fine. Inside, Adil felt like he was carrying a storm, struggled with his own reflection. Each time he imagined taking revenge, a voice inside him asked what would remain afterward. Would exposing Samir restore his peace, or simply replace one burden with another? He wanted justice, not chaos. Yet the line between the two blurred more each day. One evening, Adil stayed late at the office again. The floor was nearly empty, the hum of machines filling the silence. He opened his laptop and stared at the folder labeled with Samir's name. Everything he needed was there: proof, truth, power. His finger hovered over the mouse. He could send it anonymously. He could request a meeting. He could end it all tonight. Instead, he closed the folder. The decision surprised him, even frightened. Hey, why hesitate when the wrong was so clear? The answer came quietly, because revenge was no longer just an action. It had become a test of who he was willing to be. The next day, during a strategy meeting, Samir presented a new plan. Adil listened carefully. The ideas were polished, effective, and familiar in spirit. Samir had learned from him, perhaps more than he admitted. As the room filled with approval, Adil felt the old anger rise again. But he also felt something else. Pity. Samir's success rested on fragile ground. Every compliment reminded him of the truth he was hiding. Adil realized that Samir was not free. His victory had chained him to constant fear. That realization shifted something inside Adil. He began to consider another path. One that did not erase the truth, but did not destroy him either. He could protect his dignity without becoming consumed by revenge. He could let the truth exist without forcing it into the open through fire. Still, the struggle did not end. Late at night, the anger returned. It whispered that walking away meant weakness, that silence meant losing. Adil argued with himself, turning over every possibility. Meanwhile, Samir felt the pressure grow. He sensed Adil's restraint and feared it more than open conflict. Silence gave Adil power. Samir began making mistakes, small ones at first. Hesitations, contradictions. Others noticed, questions formed. Adil watched it all unfold. He did nothing, yet everything moved. The tension between them became a quiet presence in every room. Two men bound by one betrayal, each trapped in his own consequences. Adil felt the pull of revenge weaken, replaced by something calmer, heavier, and more difficult. Acceptance, not forgiveness, not forgetting. Acceptance of reality and control over his response. By the end of that month, Adil understood that revenge was not a single act. It was a path that demanded more sacrifice than he was willing to give. He wanted his future back, not just a moment of satisfaction. The conflict had changed him. It had forced him to look closely at his values, his limits, his strength. The choice ahead was still waiting, but now it was clearer. Revenge could expose the truth, but it could also trap him in it forever. And as Adil walked out of the office, one evening, the city lights reflecting in the glass around him, he knew the hardest battle was not against Samir. It was against the version of himself shaped by betrayal. The moment arrived without warning, quiet but heavy, like a door closing somewhere deep inside Adil's chest. It was the morning of the leadership review, a meeting that carried weight even when no one admitted it. Decisions made, they're shaped. Futures, careers rose or vanished behind calm words and polite smiles. Adil sat at the long table, his posture straight, his face unreadable. In his bag rested the final proof, organized and undeniable. He had reviewed it so many times that every detail was burned into his memory. Samir entered the room last. He looked polished, confident, and tired. The confidence was practiced now, not natural. Adil noticed the tension in his walk, the way his eyes scanned the room before settling anywhere. When Samir's gaze met Adil's, it lingered for half a second too long. No words passed between them, but everything was understood. The meeting began. Executives spoke about growth, trust, and leadership. Charts filled the screen. Samir presented his vision with steady confidence, outlining plans that had evolved from stolen beginnings into something broader. People nodded. Notes were taken. Approval hung in the air. Adil listened carefully. His heart beat fast, but his mind was clear. This was the moment he had imagined so many times. He could interrupt. He could expose the truth. He could reclaim his name and watch Samir fall. As Samir finished speaking, the room fell silent. Then someone asked for feedback. All eyes turned to Adil. The silence stretched. Adil stood slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle into his bones. He thought of the sleepless nights, the anger, the careful planning. He thought of the future he wanted, not the one shaped by bitterness, but one shaped by strength. He spoke calmly. He praised the effort, acknowledged the teamwork, and then gently spoke about the importance of transparency and shared credit. His words were measured, deliberate, not an accusation, not an attack, but enough to shift the room's energy. Enough to raise questions without answers. Samir froze. For the first time, his confidence cracked. He understood what Adil was doing. The truth was not being shouted, but it was being placed quietly in front of everyone. A warning, a boundary. The meeting moved on, but the air had changed. Afterward, Samir found Adil near the window overlooking the city. The noise of the office faded around them. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You could have ended me," Samir said finally, his voice low. Adil turned to face him. "I still can." Samir swallowed. "Why didn't you?" Adil held his gaze. "Because revenge would tie me to you forever. I don't want that." Samir looked away, shame washing over his face. "I told myself I deserved it," he said quietly. "That you were too careful, that the company needed someone bold." "And now?" Adil asked. Samir exhaled slowly. "Now I know I was wrong. Every day I wait for it to come apart." Adil nodded. "That's your consequence." He walked away before Samir could respond. In the weeks that followed, things shifted quietly. An internal review began, subtle but thorough. Questions were asked, credits were adjusted. Adil was offered a new position, one that matched his skills and recognized his contribution. It wasn't a public victory, but it was real. Samir remained in his role, but the shine was gone. He moved carefully now, burdened by the truth he carried. The fear that once controlled him softened into awareness. He had won something through betrayal, but lost something far greater. As for Adil, the anger faded slowly, like a storm moving out to sea. Some days it returned in small waves, but it no longer ruled him. He felt lighter, freer. He had chosen restraint not because it was easy, but because it was right for him. One evening, as Adil walked through the city streets, lights glowing, around him, he realized something important. Revenge had promised satisfaction, but it had also demanded a price. By stepping away, he had kept his identity intact. The betrayal would always be part of his story, but it would not define the ending. He had faced the moment of decision and chosen his future over his fury. And in that choice, he found something far stronger than revenge: peace.